I'd like to welcome Ms. Keisha Polidor to lead us in prayer.
Good morning, everyone. Get in the mood for prayer. Heavenly Father, I thank you for today. I give you all the honor and all the glory. Thank you for granting everyone traveling mercies, for getting here safe as we celebrate the second day of International Women's Day. Lord, I hope that everybody leaves their knowledge as we continue this panel discussion. And thank you for a glorious day. In your name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Ms. Polidor. I will now invite our PS of our ministry to give the official welcome.
Honorable Dr. Addis King, Minister for Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security and Dominicans with Disabilities. Honorable Ian Douglas, Minister for Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Innovation, Business and Export Development. Ms. Diane Blandford, President, Business Professional Women. Mrs. Tony Brodba, Representative, UN Women Barbados. Ms. Scandia George, Chief Magistrate, who will be joining us later. Other invited guests, the media, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant good morning to you. Welcome to day 2 of our official International Women's Day celebration under the theme, Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. The context of our sessions for today were clearly articulated by our speakers yesterday at our Exceptional Women's Day Awards ceremony. Honorable Cassani Laville, Ambassador Barron, and Honorable Dr. King all articulated the importance of achieving gender equality in the context of climate change and environmental and disaster risk reduction, which are some of the greatest global challenges of the 21st century. Without gender equality today, a sustainable future and an equal future remains beyond our reach. The National Resilience Development Strategy has clearly defined what a climate-resilient Dominica will look like. Gender equality is a goal in its own right, SDG 5, but cuts across all 17 SDGs and is reflected in the 45 targets and the 54 gender-specific indicators. Today, this panel discussion will address various aspects of gender equality, fatherhood, unpaid care, and women and politics, among others. All these key issues, though they seem small, contribute towards the bigger picture. For example, when women who are abused cannot contribute significantly to our economy, absentee fathers may cause dysfunctional families experiencing a range of social issues. Having more women in political leadership delivers progress in policy areas that are vital for economic growth and development. Therefore, all the issues which will be discussed today are linked in some way to our national priorities and clearly aligned with the National Resilient Development Strategy's realization, which identifies that gender considerations are cross-cutting and non-negotiable, and that women and men have different needs and experiences. I take this opportunity to extend a warm welcome to all our panelists with us here today, who took time off their busy schedules to be with us. We look forward to thought-provoking presentations. I also welcome all our listeners and viewers via the media, and I am very thankful to the media for joining us today. Once again, welcome and thank you.
Thank you, PS. So this morning, we will have 5 presentations. Each presenter will have 10 minutes to present, and at the end of all presentations, we will pose one question to each of the panelists. So we will have, first presentation will be from Mrs. Tony Brodba, who is the representative of UN Women. She will be presenting virtually and will not be with us in physical space. And she will be presenting Understanding the Impact of Unpaid Care Work and Making it Work Towards a Climate Resilience Agenda. We will have Ms. Diane Blandford, President of the Business Professional Women, who will be speaking on investing in women-owned businesses for a sustainable tomorrow. Chief Magistrate, Mrs. Scandia George, will be presenting on sexual harassment and abuse, the ugly truth of the impact on survivors. We have Honorable Ian Douglas, Minister for Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Innovation, Business and Export Development, who will be speaking on the impact of women in politics and other decision-making positions. And we have our Minister, Honorable Dr. Addis King, who will be presenting on fatherhood. More specifically, her topic is to improve gender equality, we need to talk about fatherhood. So each of these presenters will have about 10 minutes to make their presentation, and then we will pose one question to each panelist, and then we will end. So our first presenter is Ms. Tony Ann Brodba. She is the representative of the UN Women Multi-Country Office Caribbean. Prior to her appointment in August 2020, Ms. Brodba served as Deputy Representative from 2015 to 2020 with the MCO Caribbean, Multi-Country Office Caribbean. Before this, Ms. Brodba was the team leader for the Advancing Gender Justice in the Pacific program with the UN Women Fiji Multi-Country Office. She has served as a gender specialist for the United Nations Development Program in South Africa, as well as briefly with the UN Women South Africa Multi-Country Office, and established what is now the UN Women Country Office in Haiti. Her work experience also includes lecturing in international relations and development studies at Yanshan University in China, and directing and co-producing a film on Haiti. Ms. Brodba received her first degree from the University of the West Indies Mono Campus, and her postgraduate degrees in development studies and business administration from the London School of Economics and the ESADE Business School in Barcelona. She is now raising 2 sons with her husband. So now we will have the presentation from Ms. Tony Ann Brodba, UN Women.
Hello and happy International Women's Day 2022. My name is Tony Brodba. I am the representative for the UN Women Multi-Country Office in the Caribbean, and I wish I were able to be with you in the beautiful Nature Isle. It's been too long since I've been in Dominica, and I do plan to be there later this year. But again, today we celebrate. Across the Caribbean and around the world, communities, countries, and entire regions are faced with the ever-pressing concern of climate change. While we celebrate, we know that water levels are dangerously rising, temperatures are soaring, there's increased drought, famine, and they're prolonged. Our economies and livelihood are abruptly disrupted by catastrophic environmental shifts. A critical issue, though, that is often overlooked is how climate change adversely increases the burden on care workers. The majority of care workers, not only in the Caribbean but globally, are women. Care work includes looking after persons such as children, the elderly, those with physical and mental illnesses and disabilities, as well as the daily domestic work, the cooking, the cleaning, in some countries fetching firewood, water, and washing. Care work is that integral work that keeps societies functioning but is sometimes invisible. It supports local and global economies but is not often seen as work. Throughout the world, almost half of the total work is unpaid care work. Today, we ask you to pause and consider this question. Who is mostly responsible for providing unpaid care work, both in everyday life when it is amplified and in times of those unprecedented social, environmental, and health crises such as COVID-19? Are you thinking of the answer? It is also women. Globally, A staggering 42% of women of working age do not participate in the labor force due to their unpaid care responsibilities, and overall work longer at unpaid care and paid market work hours combined than men. Since 2020, the COVID-19 global pandemic has rapidly pushed unpaid care work to the dangerous brink, with the latest data estimating that the pandemic will force an additional 47 million women and girls into extreme poverty. That's increasing the total number of women and girls living in extreme poverty to 435 million. Added to this, the Caribbean continues to experience an alarming rise in natural hazards that undermine our very existence. I think no people really know this all too well, like those of you in Dominica. This unpaid care burden, and I call it a burden, though it's generally a beautiful responsibility to be able to care for your family. It becomes a burden when there's no support. It heightens post a disaster. In Dominica, the post-disaster needs assessment after Hurricane Maria in 2017 revealed that elderly women are doing the majority of the care work, especially in the shelters. Respondents indicated that they were spending at least 18 hours per week on unpaid care work. I was actually in Dominica when some of the research was being done on this, and I happened to be pregnant with my first child. So it was interesting seeing what it was before having children and what care work means before having children. I did support my elderly grandmother, but when you have children, the care responsibilities are that much more, even with very, very supportive spouses. While we acknowledge that care work is entrenched in the fabric of our Caribbean cultures and economies, it is the context of unpaid care work bias towards women and girls that we must critically reflect on and act on to reduce the challenges this causes in terms of our ability to actualize universal human rights for all persons, and the distinct barriers that it can produce for women and girls by reducing their opportunities to engage in other activities. For some women, they are kept out of the workforce since the unpaid care work monopolizes so much of their time. And number 3, how it stymies our commitment to achieving the sustainable development goals in our region. Addressing the gendered imbalance of unpaid care work is urgent business. Responses that allow women's input and considers their unique vulnerabilities make all interventions more effective. This is because these provisions will also benefit families. Today, as we commemorate International Women's Day 2022 under the theme of Gender Equality Today for Sustainable Tomorrow, we call upon all CARICOM member states to take tangible actions to reduce, recognize, redistribute, represent, include carers in the decision making, and reward unpaid care work for all Caribbean citizens, formally and equal, all people in the Caribbean. Adopting a multi-dimensional approach to research, policy, programming, physical infrastructure, social protection. And these social protection, we say it often, but do we know what we mean? These are the measures that ensure that the most vulnerable are lifted out of poverty and they can graduate so that they do not fall back in times of crises. We're looking at decent pay, livelihoods, and a cultural attitudinal shift to redistribute the care work amongst men and women. UN Women had a campaign for many years called Share the Care. It is a privilege to be able to share the care of children, of the elderly, of those most vulnerable in our society who need us most. We need to be able to share that care between women and men. It is essential to turning the tide of care work being powered by gender inequality. We must build forward better, rather build forward equal, and reduce the burden of unpaid care work, primarily for women. For Dominica and all other countries in our region, we further recommend the integration of social protection policies, labor policies, and all other related policies Examples being pay equity or parental leave, establish paternity leave in tandem with existing maternity leave policies. For those people who have witnessed women who have had to have C-sections, you know paternity leave is critical. Not only that, children need to bond with both their fathers and their mothers. Then there's access to universal childcare, which does not mean that government has to provide all the spaces, nor does it have to be free of cost. But there should be an option for childcare subsidies, especially for single mothers at or below the poverty line already receiving public benefits assistance or public assistance benefits, as well as working parents in the form of reverse income tax claims or partial subsidy to defray private sector childcare costs. Together, all of these are iterations of the essential revamping of the paid and unpaid care work sector across the Caribbean. UN Women remain steadfast in our commitment to share our technical and implementation support to Dominica and across the Caribbean to mitigate both the socioeconomic, cultural, institutional, and let's be honest, there are a lot of mental roadblocks that climate change has presented. The impacts of climate change have presented by increasing the unpaid care work burden for women, for men, for families. The arc of any country's true sustainable development involves full and free participation of every woman, man, girl, or boy in every aspect of society. Today and looking forward, let's come together in Dominica and across the region to mitigate the impact of climate change, both from the perspective of saving our one earth, starting with that beautiful nature isle, and reducing the pressing burden on care workers. We need to recognize, and I want to say Dominica was one of the first countries in the Caribbean to produce data for the gender equality indicators that were developed by CARICOM, the CARICOM Secretariat and UN Women. Reduce, redistribute, represent, and make sure people have an opportunity to be heard and reward. And reward. So, thank you again for listening. I wish and I look forward to the next steps on how we can collaborate on doing this together, because reducing the pressing burden on care workers who are predominantly women is one way in which we can look at gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. Have a wonderful International Women's Day and see you all soon.
Okay, thank you. That was Tony Brodba, representative of the UN Women, who spoke about some of the initiatives that are needed and that are from our ministry we have been providing special attention to, especially programs that can possibly elevate persons and graduate them from social protection programs. So we will move on next to Ms. Diane Blandford, who is the president of Business Professional Women. Diane Blandford is from Bataca, Kalinago Territory, and is currently employed with the National Bank of Dominica. She is the current president from 2021 to 2024 of Business and Professional Women Dominica, which is an affiliate of BPW International, an influential international network of business and professional women from nearly 100 countries in 5 continents. BPW International develops the professional, leadership, and business potential of women on all levels through mentoring, networking, skill building, and economic empowerment programs and projects around the world. She is a proud mother of Tiara Georges, a current student at Midwestern State, and is currently finalizing her BSc degree at UWI in banking and finance. Her main goal is to make a difference in the lives of women and girls in Dominica through empowerment, skills building, mentoring, and networking. So Ms. Diane Blandford, she will present on investing in women-owned business for a sustainable tomorrow.
Good morning to the Honorable Dr. Addis King, Honorable Minister, Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Securities and Dominicans with Disabilities, Mrs. Silvani Burton, Permanent Secretary to the named ministry, Mrs. Tony Brodba, Representative, UN Barbados. The Director of Gender Affairs, Ms. Melissa Morgan. Mrs. Scandia George, Chief Magistrate. Honorable Ian Douglas, Minister for Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Innovation, Business and Export Development. Good morning. Also, our special invited guests, media, and our listening public. Welcome. I would like to thank you all for inviting me here in my capacity as the President of the Business and Professional Women, Dominica, to this important panel discussion. I will be presenting on the topic, Investing in Women-Owned Businesses for a Sustainable Tomorrow. As we all know, International Women's Day was celebrated on Tuesday, March 8th, hence the appropriateness of our meeting today. This year, we celebrate International Women's Day under the theme, Gender Equality for a Sustainable Tomorrow. Gender equality can be defined as the ease of access to important resources and opportunities, no matter the gender of an individual, including economic participation and decision-making. This year's theme is fitting, as many women have indeed been striving to create opportunities for themselves and others for employment, providing various services to the public, and giving their time and resources towards helping others. We have been hearing the words sustainable and resilient over the past several years. More prevalently after the passage of Tropical Storm Erica in 2015 and Hurricane Maria 2017, and now continuously since the advent of COVID-19 from 2020. Thank you. These words have since registered in the minds of many. We continue to persevere as best possible despite the many challenges that have affected us here in Dominica and the world over. Now, to discuss my topic, I just want to speak on the many ways that we are able to invest in women-owned businesses, because this, of course, will help them sustain themselves as individuals. This will definitely have a domino effect and will encourage the sustainability of a vibrant Dominica through the reduction of unemployment, the reduction of dependency on the government for financial assistance, and the ability to support themselves and the sustainability of their livelihoods. There are indeed opportunities available to obtain such investments through loan financing at very reasonable and affordable rates. The Eastern Caribbean Partial Guarantee Corporation, or ECPCGC, is a loan guarantee program that aims to provide access to financing to micro, small, medium enterprises, MSMEs, of up to 75% of the loan facility. This is facilitated through the commercial banks, credit unions, and development banks in the member states in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union. These include Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. On island, the National Bank of Dominica Limited and the Republic Bank Limited currently offer the program. This came about due to the realization that many business owners do not have collateral available to obtain financing to sustain or start their businesses. This is generally the case for persons in the Kalinago territory, where the land is communally owned and cannot be used as collateral. Another recent opportunity for obtaining capital for financing new business ventures or expansion to existing businesses is the recently announced Small Business Loan Facility at the Aid Bank. The government of Dominica has loaned 27.8 million EC dollars from the Caribbean Development Bank for on-lending to small businesses. The government, as we are aware, previously provided such a facility in 2020 to aid small business owners who were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. This was in tune of 5 million EC dollars. Many small business owners were successful and would also be aware of the necessary requirements, which may have remained the same for this new loan lending venture. The women and persons of the Kalinago community will also soon benefit from the recently launched Kalinago Development Fund, and this is absolutely truly momentous as we strive to break the bias and receive access to funding. Many persons, you realize, go into business and they do not always take the time out to research, do the market research, and look into identifying what exactly is needed in planning their business venture. Offering introductory classes is also an option as it relates to registering their businesses, not only with the Intellectual Properties Office, but also as it relates to Social Security and the Inland Revenue Division where applicable. Business plan preparation and its importance, basic financial education, introductory bookkeeping and record keeping, customer service satisfaction, because that is absolutely important when operating a business, are just a few areas MSMEs can be provided with assistance to build their business and ensure that it is functional. There are many opportunities for financing business ventures, and there are also guidelines under which these entities operate. And some of these educational training programs can aid in securing financing because the persons will understand and appreciate the reason for this documentation that is needed. Okay. And moving on to just highlight a few MSMEs on island which provide various contributions to the socio-economic development and to gender equality. I'm just going to name a few businesses that we all may have heard of, we may know, and just basically point out, how they make a difference. We have quick delivery. Of course, it's a woman-owned business, and we all know what they're here for. They offer delivery of food, groceries, and other services, and that absolutely allows business persons, families, to save time. We have Jazz It Up Creations, where you are able to get customized items for whether it's a birthday, whether it is a wedding, for an anniversary, and it's available on island. You don't have to order online. Basically, you get creative, there's love put in it, time, place, and delivery, and what the customer deserves or the customer has requested. We have businesses like Wandy's Event Planning, Jutem Events Management. These women bring the dream of the clients to life. Despite the pandemic, the memories will remain. We also have business owned by a young woman, Splash Out Laundry. Persons have busy lives. You juggle, you have students, you have your own life, your work, and the availability of this service, you have more time spent with your family. So it may not be something you do on a regular, but it allows for, the opportunity. We have my Kalinago sister, Cecilia, Handmade Crafts. She contributes to the tourism industry, and not only for the tourism, but also for local persons, because the availability of beautiful Kalinago craft is there for both foreigners and locals alike. Owning a piece of her art is definitely rewarding. We also have Ida Sewing Creations. This young lady is from the Kalinago territory, and she's absolutely talented. She has so many options of products that she offers. She has locally handmade bags. You would not know the difference whether it was purchased online or if you purchased in a store. Miss Regina Joseph, 20-year farmer in the Kalinago territory. She has maintained her farm. She continues to be very impactful in the agricultural field. These taxi service, we also recognize that you never really see female taxi drivers. There are not many female taxi drivers. However, it's not the norm, but these women continue to make use of the opportunity that they have and provide the service to locals and foreigners when required. Outsourced development and recruitment services, female business owned. She offers recruitment services and management support services to businesses. And the women here and listening, how can I forget La Diva nails, the glam, Gabby's nails. We all love a good manicure and an acrylic set, whether for a special occasion or if we just feel like it. Imagine not being able to have your nails or your hair done as we had the experience, when the pandemic happened. These are just a few of the women-owned businesses here in Dominica. I wish I had more time to point out many more. However, I just want to basically, highlight these persons just to encourage persons to realize that they make a difference. Be it small, but they make a difference in employment, saving, taking care of their families, and so much more. In closing, International Women's Day has come and gone, basically. However, we must continue to advocate throughout the year for the rights of women as it relates to gender equality. We must continue to provide support and encourage women business owners to continue their hard work. Their contributions do help and maintain a socio-economic development, the socio-economic development of the island. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blandford. Thank you for outlining some of the resources available for women to access credit to start their own businesses as we move towards climate resilient Dominica and building the resilience of our women-owned businesses. We will now move to our next speaker, Mrs. Scandia Carrick George. So Mrs. Scandia Carrick George is from the town of Portsmouth. She obtained a bachelor's degree in law from the University of Wolverhampton. Following this, she attended the Inns of Court School of Law in London, where she was awarded very competent. After successfully completing law school, she was called to the Utter Bar of the Middle Temple of England and Wales, Utter Bar of the Middle Temple of England and Wales in August of 2001. She then returned home to Dominica and was able to secure employment with the government in September 2001. In November of that year, she was called to the bar and admitted to practice as a barrister and solicitor in the Commonwealth of Dominica. In a quest to increase her knowledge, she later enrolled in the University of London Distance Learning Program to further her education in the field of law. From this institution, she obtained a postgraduate certificate in laws with merit in the specialization Banking and Finance Law, a postgraduate diploma in laws with merit in the specialization International Business Law, and Masters of Law in the specialization Commercial and Corporate Law. She is also a trained mediator. She has worked with the government as state attorney from 2001 to 2008 in various departments, including the AG's Chambers, Inland Revenue Division, Legal Aid Clinic, and finally the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. In all these positions, she enjoyed working as a prosecutor at the DPP office more, as it gave her the opportunity to be in the courtroom. In May of 2008, she was appointed as the magistrate, and in November 2013, she assumed the position of Chief Magistrate of the Commonwealth of Dominica. She loves her job, as it provides her the opportunity to be in the courtroom, to speak into the lives of many, and to carry out administrative duties and to assist in the dispensation of justice in her beloved country. Scandia has been for the past serving as the director of the Portsmouth and then the Central Cooperative Credit Union. She is very happy for the opportunity to give back to her community as an avid credit unionist almost 20 years. She attributes her accomplishments to her relationship with God. She is married to Reverend Eddie George and has 3 lovely daughters. So we will have Chief Magistrate George, and she will be speaking about sexual harassment and abuse, the ugly truth of the impact on survivors.
A pleasant good morning to everyone here. I'd like to recognize the presence of P.S. Silvani Burton, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry for Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Securities, and Dominicans with Disabilities, Mrs. Tony Brodba, Representative of UN Women, the Honorable Ian Douglas, Minister for Trade, the Honorable Dr. Addis King, Honorable Minister of Youth Development and Gender Affairs, and Ms. Diane Blandford, president, business professional women, and also the media. I am to speak on sexual harassment and abuse, the ugly truth of the impact on survivors. Now, what is sexual harassment? It is unlawful for a person to harass someone else because of that person's sex. Sexual harassment includes unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical harassment of a sexual nature. Sexual harassment is any form of unwelcome sexual behavior that's offensive, humiliating, or intimidating. Sexual harassment can include someone touching, grabbing, or making other physical contact with you without your consent, making comments to you that have a sexual meaning, asking you for sex or sexual favors, staring at you too much with a particular kind of stare, displaying rude or offensive material so that you or others can see it, making sexual gestures or suggestive body movements towards you, cracking sexual jokes and comments around or to you, questioning you about your sex life, insulting you with sexual comments, behavior on a phone call that makes you feel uncomfortable, or indecently exposing themselves to you. So all these constitute sexual harassment. How can sexual harassment affect you? If you're being sexually harassed, you might feel stressed, anxious, depressed, withdraw from social situations, lose confidence and self-esteem, have physical symptoms such as stress, headaches, backaches, or sleep problems, and generally be less productive and unable to concentrate. Sexual abuse, on the other hand, is also referred to as sexual molestation. It is an abusive sexual behavior by one person upon another. It is often perpetrated using force or by taking advantage of another. Sexual abuse is an act of violence which the attacker uses against someone they perceive as weaker than them. It usually does not come from an uncontrollable sex drive, as most people think, but instead it is a crime committed deliberately with the goal of controlling and humiliating the victim. Most victims of sexual violence are women or girls, unfortunately. A fact that reflects their social stance even today in the 21st century. Some societies see women as inferior to men, and in those societies, a lot of sexual violence occurs. 90% of all rapes are committed against women. 1 in 5 girls are sexually molested or harassed, as opposed to 1 in 20 boys experience childhood sexual abuse. Sexual violence is another means of oppressing women in patriarchal societies especially. It is a social phenomenon that exists in every society that accepts aggressive behavior and gender inequality. Luckily for us, that is not the case in Dominica. Types of sexual assault. Sexual assault can be things like rape, sodomy, attempted rape, gang rape, and incest. The effects of sexual assault. While each survivor is unique in their experience, many survivors are impacted in the following ways. Shame. Survivors think that they are bad, that they are wrong, that they are dirty or permanently flawed. One survivor of rape said, of sexual abuse said, "The way he treated me was so shameful and humiliating. It made it less and less likely that I could speak. I am sure he was very conscious of that. He did such horrendous things. If he had just punched me, that would have been much easier, because that is something you can say to people," and end quote. Another effect or impact of sexual assault is guilt. Survivors feel that the abuse was their fault. Another one is denial. Some of them say, it wasn't that bad, it only happened once, trying to deny the impact so that it does not hurt too much. They say, I am fine, I don't need anything. Minimizing the assaults can be a coping strategy. It might include survivors thinking that their abuse was not as bad as someone else's. Boundaries. Because sexual violence is such a boundary violation, it impacts the survivor's perception of when or how to set boundaries. Survivors may be unfamiliar with boundaries in general. Some may not know that they have a right to create and reinforce boundaries, while others may need support developing and practicing boundaries. For example, in some rape victims, you can see that it leads to promiscuity in some. Sometimes during court, you would see a rape victim is there. Let's say it's a young lady. She was probably molested at the age of 14. By the time she is 17, you see her with one child. Or if the case drags a little bit and let's say it's still going on by the time she's 19, she might have 2 children. And so you see sometimes it can lead to, not that it doesn't happen outside of that, but I find it's very common when once somebody has been sexually molested, their boundaries kind of drop, and it can lead to promiscuity. On the other hand, it can also lead to some people becoming recused. You know, they recuse themselves and just go quiet and in a shell. Trust. Sexual assault is a betrayal of trust. Most survivors find it difficult to trust other people, as well as themselves and their own perceptions. They could struggle with intimacy or be too eager to form close attachments. So it affects people trusting, which can affect marriages and so on later on in life. Safety. Survivors' sense of safety is altered. Some people just feel after they've been assaulted or molested that nowhere is safe or nobody can be trusted anymore. Isolation. This is a big issue for adult survivors. Many feel that they do not deserve support, that they are tainted, and that others will not want to be their friends or their lovers. Physical. There's also physical impact on people who are sexually abused. Survivors may have body complaints, eating disturbances, anxiety, difficulty concentrating, and physical symptoms related to areas on their body affected by the assault. A person who is assaulted may sustain bruises and cuts. They could also have more severe injuries such as knife wounds, broken bones, damaged genitals. Others may develop chronic pain without an obvious physical cause. Some survivors experience sexual dysfunction and fertility issues. Others may develop sexually transmitted infections. One rape victim, and I quote, said, "To this day, I will never know whether my back problem was actually caused by the force of the rape or by me trying to push him off of me. I have permanent damage to my back. I bled for weeks, and future sexual experiences were extremely painful and caused more bleeding." Not all women who are sexually assaulted experience physical injury or medical problems. However, a range of physical injuries and health consequences can be associated with the assault. Physical impacts can include damage to urethra, vagina, and anus, gastrointestinal, sexual, and reproductive health problems, increased risk of contracting STDs, unwanted pregnancies, and decisions regarding abortion, pelvic pain, irritable bowel syndrome, chronic disease such as diabetes and arthritis, headaches, gynecological problems, for example, dysmenorrhea, cramps, and so on. Not only physical, but another impact is emotional. Most survivors may become expressive. They may express anger. Some are disoriented. I remember taking evidence from a lady who had been raped in court, and she was a grown lady, but you could see that that experience had traumatized her so much that she wasn't even thinking straight. So it does affect some people a lot emotionally, to the point where they're not even able to function properly at work or at home anymore. Long-term reactions include coping mechanisms. Some of them experience continuing anxiety, poor health, and a sense of helplessness. Fear is another big impact. Research indicates that anxiety and intense fear are the primary responses following a rape. Some people go through depression, mood swings, sleep disturbances, flashbacks, disassociation, panic attacks, phobias, relationship difficulties, withdrawal or isolation, paranoia, anxiety. Some suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, getting nightmares, and so on. One rape victim said, and I quote, "Depression followed, as did lack of any self-care or self-worth. Though I am ashamed to admit this, yes, suicide did enter my mind on occasions." A range of factors can influence the impact of sexual assault, including the victim's, survivor's relationship to the perpetrator. For example, if it's a close relative, it can be more damaging than if it was somebody further. The extent and severity of accompanying psychological or physical abuse, the severity of the abuse, the extent of physical harm, the length of time over which the abuse occurred. For some children, it's over a long period, and it really impacts them from all angles. The responses of family and friends to the victim or survivor. I remember doing another PI, and the father was raping the daughter over a period of time, so it was a case of incest. And when the daughter finally confessed and told her mother, the mother just refused to believe. And she's saying, "If my husband get locked up, who is going to take care of us?" And she just didn't believe the child and was just brushing the child away. And when the matter finally came to court, she was there supporting her husband, not her child. And these things can really impact negatively on a woman. The woman's experience of the various systems, health, some healthcare professionals, not professional at all, especially if it's somebody that was already in life, they figure you accustom, and sometimes they rough them up. Police officers, and even in the court, we have to be particularly careful and sensitive to rape victims. I don't want to go too much beyond my time, so I'll try to cut it short. Research suggests that victims or survivors can experience feelings of low self-esteem. One woman said, "I have done such a good job of blocking it all out. I can't even remember very much." And there's also social and community impacts. Sexual assault can impact the way victim interacts with those close to him and the community as a whole. Interpersonal relationships with intimate partners, as well as friendships and family relationships, can all be affected following sexual assault. Difficulties with communication, intimacy, trust, sexual relations, and enjoyment of social activities can all be affected adversely. Some people may not want to go anywhere, or I'm scared to go there, or I'm scared to go here because of the experience that they had. One woman said, and I quote, "I can't stand men. I live alone and I don't go out. I hate them. You don't have to believe me, though, but it's true. I wish I was dead." So you can see the real impact. I know that probably men can be violated or assaulted too, but we're focusing on women today because, as we saw earlier, the percentage of women that are violated is so much greater. Let me just wrap up. Research has shown that women regularly feel vulnerable in their local communities and public spaces as a consequence of the fear of rape. Work life may also be disrupted. and so on. There can also be financial impacts, loss of actual earnings, loss of future earning capacity, medical expenses, and intangible costs. To sum up, I would just like to admonish those who are being sexually harassed, whether on the job or otherwise. Talk to the offender. If it's somebody you know the person is staring at you or touching you inappropriately or so on, talk to the offender. If you're scared to talk to them, talk to someone. Talk to your boss, your supervisor. If it's the supervisor, probably you need to talk to somebody outside, maybe somebody in welfare or so on. Be informed. Keep a diary. Save any evidence. Write down your dates. They said what to you or they did what to you. Get external information and advice. If it continues, you might need to make a formal complaint. And if you're being affected by sexual assault, if you have been affected by sexual assault, we have to bear in mind that it's something that affects different people, different individuals differently. So I'd just like to encourage those of us who have children, especially little girls, look out for your children. Make sure that they are in safe spaces as much as possible to the best of your ability. Some ladies just leave their children and go to dance or go to disco, stay late, lock them in a house late night and so on. Make sure your children are in safe spaces, left with responsible adults, people that you trust and so on, not just with any neighbor or any friend. Try to be careful where you send especially your young girls on sleepovers. To sleepovers and so on. If you are in an abusive relationship, speak out, stand up for yourself, and if all else fails, get out of the relationship. And finally, watch where you go. You know, if it's very late, don't go to any isolated place alone, and so on. Let's, as women, stand up for ourselves, take care of ourselves, so that we avoid all these negative impacts. And if you have already been impacted, and these things are troubling you, try your best to get some counseling and some help so that you could overcome the challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Magistrate George. Very good, outlining the ugly truth of the impact on survivors. You touch on the physical, emotional, mental, relationships with others, and you see how wide the impacts can be. So the next speaker would be Honorable Ian Douglas, the Minister for Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Innovation, Business and Export Development. Honorable Ian Douglas was born in the second town of Portsmouth. He left in 1992 to pursue studies at the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus, in the Faculty of Law, and then went on to the Hugh Woodin Law School in Trinidad to achieve his legal education certificate. He has been a member of the Labour Youth Organization from 1980 to present, and he returned in 1998 to help revitalize the Labour Youth Organization, which played a major role in the party's electoral victory at the polls in the 2000 general elections, before running for the by-election in the Portsmouth constituency in 2000 and becoming the parliamentary representative from then. He opened his private legal practice, the Indian River Chambers, and ran his private practice as an attorney at law from 2001 to 2005. After being victorious at the polls again in 2005, he was appointed to the position of Attorney General and Minister for Legal Affairs, and in 2007 was appointed Minister for Tourism and Legal Affairs, a position he held until December 2014. Mr. Douglas was re-elected in the 5th straight term in 2019 and is now the Honorable Minister for Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Innovation, Business and Export Development. He is presently a ministerial member of the Council for Trade and Economic Development, the regional body responsible for trade and economic policy in Carrick. This morning he will be presenting on the impact of women in politics and other decision-making positions. Honorable Ian Douglas.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. Let me thank the organizers of this roundtable for inviting me to this activity. And I feel very privileged to be the only man on the panel this morning, surrounded by some very formidable women who continue to contribute to national development. I thank you very much. I have been asked to share on the impact of women in politics and other decision-making positions in Dominica. And if I am to adequately share on that, I will start by giving a historical overview or a historical analysis of the contribution of women to politics and dovetail into the other decision-making positions. So if you trace the history of politics in Dominica, you will find that women have always played a significant role in the politics of this country. This may be so because we have always had a history of strong women in our pre-independence, or if you want to go back and say, in our post-emancipation society in Dominica has always had a great legacy of very strong vociferous women who have been able to stand up on their own and speak their minds in private or in public. Women have been the dominant figures in shaping the nuclear family and in running the homes by and large, because you find that a great percentage of our families are single women households, really. And this is not a phenomenon that is only germane to Dominica. Perhaps this is a regional phenomenon. And while men may have played the traditional role as breadwinners, but it is the women who have been left with the responsibility for running the households and raising the children. And I say that to put it into context. That is why women have had so much influence at the grassroots level on the political sphere in Dominica, because they run things at the home. When a woman comes home, by and large, men are very quiet at the home, but what a woman say goes at the home. Say we supporting Labour, or we supporting that candidate, and it's that I say in my house, and generally children are expected to fall in line. And also women in post-colonial Dominica have been allowed to assist their male counterparts in other spheres in the socio-economic endeavors. So if you find you have a man have a shop or a bakery or even a garden, or he going on sea as a fisherman, it is the women who you find most times behind the counter. So whether you get a little quiddy or not, is really the women making the decisions. When the man goes on sea, an in the fishing boat, when he comes back home, comes back on shore, generally it's the women who controls the basket of fish, and she's the one selling. And most of the times, I don't know if that still happens in modern Dominica, but if you go back a couple of years, the woman is the one who has the scale, she's the one who has the basket of money under her arm, and she's the one who decides how much she's selling upon her fish and who she's selling her fish to, no matter how much shell that's blowing and how much noise you're making. Even in the gardens too, you find a man will go to the garden and he may be the main cultivator of the crops. But when it comes to bringing the crop to market and going in the market or having their tray on the side of the road selling, it is the woman really who is controlling the sales and generally going to market with the crops and the fresh produce. So women really used to run things as far as trade and commerce is concerned in rural Dominica before. When you have your little bakery, even if the man is the one who really lighting the fire in the bakery and kneading the bread, but when it comes to the next day, when the bread is baked and selling of the bread in our little community bakeries, it's really you find the women making the decisions. So women have never really been fundamentally disenfranchised in the true sense of the word in the traditional Dominican society. Therefore, playing their roles in the political development of our society has always come as second nature to women. Women are the loud ones in our communities, whether it used to be before going by the river to wash, before washing machines became commonplace at our homes, or on the block talking with their counterparts and quote-unquote ponging beef, so to speak. Women were the opinion leaders in our community, like I said before. Women were generally the ones who decided where the political support would go, first at the grassroots level in their families, and then at the community level. Women have always had the energy and the fuel behind politics and political campaigns in Dominica before. when you talk about rallies and motorcades, you always find women are the vociferous ones, have their flags and their whistles and the talking. And if you voice an opinion that is contrary to what a woman on the ground thinks, she'll give you MIP for her political party or her candidate back then. Even when, before politics became so sophisticated in the age of internet and Facebook and stuff, and political parties used to have to go on the ground and hold political meetings in the evening and in the night, sometimes under bullseye in our communities. It is the women who would shout from the gatherings and challenge the politicians, and maybe sometimes in the safety of the darkness of those communities, and say, you lie, it's not that, and it's not that. And the politician used to have questions and answer periods after they make their presentation. And by and large, it would be the women who would come up and ask the questions about what you plan to do for our community and what is your party going to do if you win the elections. That sort of thing. Men were really more the docile ones in the background as far as politics is concerned. So for example, in 1949, when Christopher Emmanuel Loeblack, the man after whose name the incoming bridge into Roseau is named, E.C. Loeblack Bridge, when he founded the Dominica Labour Party back in 1949, he had the collaboration of a willing partner in a formidable woman in our history called Mrs. Phyllis Shand Alfrey. She was the one who helped him to form the Dominica Labour Party. So one of the most formidable political organizations in our country's history, Dominica Labour Party, was actually co-founded by a woman called Miss Phyllis Shand Alfrey. And I may dare say that E.C. Loeblack was able perhaps to penetrate the middle class and maybe the small upper class, which was referred to as the bourgeoisie in Dominica at that time, because he had Mrs. Phyllis Shand Alfrey, who was quote-unquote from that ilk of society, who helped him to gain wide acceptance when they formed the Dominica Labour Party. And also too, you have formidable women like as she was at the time, Miss Mary Eugenia Charles, who was a formidable woman, who was a firebrand, and she was an attorney at law at the time, who started championing the causes of the disenfranchised in our society at that time. And she eventually came about to forming the Dominica Freedom Party in 1968. She started, first of all, writing articles in the Dominica Chronicle at the time, and eventually started agitating in Dominica. When we went through a very turbulent period in the 1970s, Miss Charles really emerged as one of the foremost politicians in Dominica at the time. And she contested the Roseau Central seat in 1975, I believe, for the first time, and never lost that seat until she left office in 1995. Of course, we know about her great election victory in the 1980 elections in Dominica, where she won 17 of the 21 seats up for grabs, and 2 of the independent candidates moved across after the election to give her critical support, and she ran the country and really stabilized Dominica and brought us back to a period of normalcy after the turbulent period of 1978-79, when we had the May 29th uprising, and soon after that we were slammed and devastated by Hurricane David, and Miss Charles really took us back to a period of stability throughout the 80s. Very formidable woman. So during her reign of office also, Miss Charles brought a lot of other women to prominence. Like we had some speakers of the House of Assembly like Mary Davis Peer, and also later Miss Neva Edwards as speakers of the House. But I'm sure you will remember the most popular, prominent, and celebrated speaker of the Dominica House of Assembly, Mrs. Alex Boyd Knight, who is now Speaker Emeritus, who served as the Speaker of the House of Assembly for 20 years and really made her mark on our parliamentary democracy and parliamentary debate in Dominica at the time. And all of these women had a profound impact on the Dominica political landscape. But perhaps there were some others in the raw political sense of the word, like Honorable Ambassador Lauren Bannis Roberts, who is serving now as an ambassador, and you saw her contribution in bringing the regional netball competition that just ended a few weeks ago to Dominica. But Lauren played a very pivotal role in the stabilizing of the government, of the coalition government, because in 2000, when the Dominica Labour Party won the election, they didn't really win outright. Dominica Labour Party won 10 seats, and you can only form a government with 11 seats. So they had to form a coalition government with their traditional arch rivals, which was the Dominica Freedom Party. And again, we see Eugenia Charles's influence in that coalition, because in the campaign of the elections of 2000, before the elections, Eugenia Charles made a very profound statement where she encouraged her freedom supporters to join the Dominica Labour Party or give tacit support to the Dominica Labour Party. And so it was easy for the Dominica Labour Party with 10 seats and the Freedom Party with 2 seats to form a coalition in 2000. And you had a very formidable woman who was brave enough against the threats of her party, the United Workers' Party at the time, to come across and join the coalition government in the principle and with the interest of nation building, putting her country before her party and stabilizing the government through very difficult times in Dominica. And we know that the rest is history. The Labour Party grew from strength to strength to today, where the Labour Party enjoys an 18-seat majority, out of which I believe about maybe 8 of my colleagues in the parliament right now are women. And I must say, really holding their own and making a mark in their own right. And you will find that a lot of women who have hitherto, or before those 8 women in politics right now got involved, you had some very powerful women who had already made their mark in other spheres of community life and community development, had given a lot in other spheres. So I speak of people like Miss Vernice Belloni, who was well respected in the Vickers community and the Vickers constituency. And of course you had the mother of the present parliamentary representative for the Grand Fork constituency, Miss Roberts, up in Grand Fork. And also too, you had a number of other powerful women who were able to win elections, not because necessarily of the political party carrying them, but they in their own right carrying their weight. I mean, my colleague here, Honorable Dr. King, you will probably remember, because you're from St. Joseph, that Honorable Doreen Paul ran the seat, but it was really her mother who had carried the political sway in that seat to allow her to emerge victorious, I believe in the 1995 or 2000 or thereabouts. So we see sometimes even when women are not actually on the political ticket, but they hold so much influence at the grassroots level that they even allow the male counterparts to be successful on the political ticket. I mean, if you look around Dominica, there are several examples of that. I myself personally can speak of the reason why my father and later my uncle and myself have been so successful at the grassroots level in politics in Dominica. A lot of people don't understand. It's not necessarily only because of our political dynamism and the party that we ran for the Dominica Labour Party, but because of a lot of powerful, strong women, like my grandmother, a person the whole community used to call Madam, and also to later on my mother was Nurse Douglas, who contributed a lot in the health sphere and health system in Portsmouth and in the north. So, and if you go around Dominica, and there are several examples of that. The present Prime Minister, his aunt was involved in community development, in healthcare, and I can use a number of examples where a lot of men who are successful or who were successful at the political level really have the women who were at the back of them, either as their wives or their mothers, or in some cases their girlfriends in the communities, really pushing the campaign for them that made them as successful as they were. Even today, if you look at the local government system in Dominica, you have a lot of women really involved in local government. For example, I believe the city of Roseau right now has a woman as the mayor. The town of Portsmouth has another formidable young woman as a mayor, and in a number of different other communities around Dominica, you have women as chairpersons of their village councils. So you can see, and if you look in the public service, the top echelons of the public service right now, from the CAPSEC, the FS, the financial secretary, I mean, you go down to the chief personnel of the CPO, a number of the permanent secretaries in those ministries, the permanent secretary here with us today, the permanent secretary in health, the permanent secretary in education, the permanent secretary in tourism, I mean the permanent secretary in my ministry in trade. A lot of formidable women have been playing their roles in politics and in decision-making positions in Dominica. You look at the private sector, a lot of the banks, the head of the Aid Bank, the head of Domlec, I mean you name it, the head of Digicel, a lot of the powerful companies in the private sector in Dominica today are really run by women. So women have been playing their role in the political sphere, in the socio-economic development of Dominica since, I mean, way back in like I say, in post-emancipation, in colonial times. And I see that continuing for the foreseeable future. So basically, in 10 minutes, in a nutshell, that is really what I would really like to propose, looking at the socio-economic development of women's contributions and where we have gotten today, the chief magistrate, the head of creed, I mean, in a number of areas, women continue to contribute to the development of Dominica and have really brought their personal and peculiar experiences as women to bear on the decision-making process in the development process of Dominica. Thank you very much.
Douglas. Thank you, Honorable Douglas. I thought that was a brilliant presentation as you provided a historical context of women influencing our political landscape as it is today and the critical role that they played over history. So thank you. We will now move to our last presenter, our Honorable Minister, Dr. Addis King, the Minister for Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security, and Dominicans with Disabilities. Honorable Dr. Addis King was born in St. Joseph, Dominica. She is a medical doctor by training and profession for over 15 years. She served as a medical doctor at the Princess Margaret Hospital, now the Dominica China Friendship Hospital, for over 10 years. She is currently the Honorable Minister of Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Senior Security and Dominicans Disabilities, and Parliamentary Representative for the St. Joseph constituency for approximately 2 years. Throughout her career, from primary school teacher to a laboratory technician to medical doctor, and now serving as the Honorable Minister and Parliamentary Representative, Honorable King in her profession has always been passionate about social and youth issues. As the Honorable Minister, she has been advocating at a higher level for the enactment of the juvenile justice bills, which will improve and introduce diversion rehabilitation, addressing treatment needs, and successful reintegration of children back into the community. She has also been leading in strengthening response programming for the most vulnerable impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, including poor households, gender-based violence survivors, and persons with disabilities. This morning, she will be presenting on To Improve Gender Equality, We Need to Talk About Fatherhood. Honorable Addis King.
Good morning to everyone. First of all, let me really thank my colleague and friend, Honorable Douglas, for such a sterling presentation, and all our presenters before. I want to thank you on behalf of my ministry. I think you have done an excellent job today, and I hope we can continue to have these discussions in the future. Permit me to recognize in our presence Honorable Ian Douglas, Minister for Trade, Commerce, Entrepreneurship, Innovation, Business, and Export Development. Mrs. Silvani Burton, Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Youth Development and Empowerment, Youth at Risk, Gender Affairs, Seniors Security, and Dominicans with Disability. Ms. Scandia George, our Chief Magistrate and one of our panelists here today. Mrs. Tony Brodba, our representative of UN Women in Barbados. Ms. Diane Blandford, Ms. Diane Blandford, President of Business and Professional Women, Ms. Melissa Morgan, Director of the Bureau of Gender Affairs, and other members of the Bureau, as well as members of staff of the Ministry of Youth Development. Our invited guests, the media, and the other listening public, a pleasant good morning once again. Today marks day 2 of our International Women's Day 2022 celebrations. And this roundtable discussion, I have been given the task to talk about, to improve gender equality, we need to talk about fatherhood. Today, I will address you on a less discussed, though pertinent part of the gender equality discourse, equality for men in the context of fatherhood. Nowhere is the issue of responsibility more significant than these conversations about fatherhood. According to the World Health Organization, parents and the caregivers are the most significant providers of nurturing care for children, with implications for their psychosocial development and even their acquisition of language and communication skills. Today's roundtable conversation opens up opportunities and the possibilities. Among these, the opportunity for seeing men as shapers of the child's biological, social, psychological, and spiritual well-being. As you would expect, and this means much to me as a medical doctor, men's participation in their children's everyday activities improves their anatomical and the physiological structure and functioning. As a result, what happens? The mother finds a child she now has to care for by adding to that child's social skill development, the smile, the eye contact, the stretch and reach. There is much to be said in this regard, but the point is that men have a critical part to play in development of an infant and growing child right up to the adolescent age. No single person in the world can influence the thinking and behavior of an adolescent male child than his caring and loving father. The history of the father-son relationship and industry finds its real substance from the critical stage just when the adolescent male is about to enter young adulthood. That's the first point. Over the past decade, the important role men and boys can play in empowering women and achieving gender equality in the home, the community, and the workplace has become increasingly recognized. But just before we talk about how men and boys can help empower the lives of women, let's talk about how men can improve the lives of their boys so that they can be open to the counsel of their mothers. The father-son bonding is one of the most misunderstood relationships. It is misunderstood most by men themselves. When a father bonds with his male child, the relationship and non-verbal communication opens the man's thinking about himself. Yes, men, you become acquainted and then familiar with sources of fear. Not that you are afraid, but you embrace a deep concern for that child that you are holding or feeding. You could become angry, but even that emotion fades into insignificance when you hear your sons cry. Will you be able to support that child? What will my friends think when they know I'm home holding baby? Let me hasten to say that among select tribes of Central Africa, men hold their children 47% of the daytime. They become acutely familiar with the anatomical development of the child and even make him stronger because men like to think that their children should be strong. Then, of course, a man holding his son or playing with him as he runs in the house or yard, as he laughs, creates games, remembers his own childhood, and naturally improves his own well-being. Just imagine when the man's child is female and a girl. Should he touch her? Can he bathe the child? Should he be tough with her and play as vigorously with her as he does with the little boy? Little does he know, he is influencing that girl's child's first understanding of men and their behavior. Strange as it may sound, a man encounters the female in him, a profound awareness of transcending his maleness. A female child brings out much in a man, but few men can notice this. Whatever it is, a man entering the lives of his growing child enhances his development, the growth and development of his child, and indeed improves the relationship of the child with her or his mother. The mother's health is boosted and sustained. That's my second point. Gender equality suggests a partnership. In fact, it requires a partnership between both women and men, whether they live apart or together. Fatherhood can no longer fall into two categories, breadwinner or disciplinarian. These outdated notions of fatherhood often result in absentee fathers, and the majority, if not all, of the childcare work becomes the responsibility of mothers, grandmothers, and female caregivers. I also want to mention that grandfathers are critical in the development, especially between the age of 7 and 14 of a male child. Interesting. They help that age group of male children to practice abstract thinking and strengthen their imagination. That is because grandfathers like to tell stories, and they are less eager to punish and tend to show the children how to do things, even providing the tools for doing so. They like taking walks and pointing out sites in the environment that the child might not think was important. Grandfathers tend to love animals, particularly those who live in rural areas. Think, therefore, of the role that the grandfather can play in the growth and development of that child. The same goes for all other caretakers in an extended family, including nephews, uncles, cousins who are male. According to the age of the male child, they can serve as early role models by simply interacting with that child with love and respect. Fathers, grandfathers, nephews, uncles can all show their male children and relatives how to respect their grandmothers and mothers, given the states of calm and friendliness they share with them throughout their day's interaction. This is the third point. In a recent focus group discussion facilitated by my ministry via the Bureau of Gender Affairs, our men stated that they spend about 4 hours weekly on unpaid care work compared to women who revealed that they spend 4 to 6 hours daily on unpaid care, roughly 8 times the amount of time men within the same age range spent on unpaid care work. As a result, women have less time to engage in paid labor. This produces a dependency on the part of the woman and, in fact, violates the woman's right to self-development. Fathers need to know, too, that a woman's time in this 21st century is not simple for housekeeping and childcare. Women are breadwinners, too, and significantly influence their sons' perception of work ethic. When both men and women work as partners, their sons notice and tend most of the times to treat their wives and sisters with the respect that they saw shared between their mothers and fathers. And the two do not have to live together to let this happen. The father has to be in contact with his son. Many men think that because they do not have child support, they should not visit their sons. Bread is good, but an emerging child needs more than just bread. A father's love to his son can sprout tremendous seeds of knowledge and wisdom. What is the point? Fathers have a profound and lasting impact on their child's development. This is the fourth point. In our culture, we tend to say that little girls are usually very attached to their fathers. It may sound strange, but it is true. Little girls tend to get a sense of the type of husband they want based on their relationships with their fathers or grandfathers. And this is my short but fifth point. Research shows that when men participate as an equal parent, whether they're involved in changing the diapers of infants and toddlers, preparing meals for the children, and seeing to their hygiene, interacting with their children beyond disciplinary actions, encourages the personal growth and development of both the father and the child. Though the woman has experienced that development through her special interaction with her child throughout the ages, it is always a grand opportunity when men take on the responsibility to nurture and care for their child. A man's very emotional intelligence is enhanced through acts of patience and gentleness. When fathers are more involved in childcare, they are less misogynist. According to Coltrane, writing in 1996, evidence of the presence of a nurturing fathering practices is the most consistent predictor of gender equality. Carlson and Turner, writing in 2010, noted that fatherhood is a turning point for a man that prompts him to consider changes in lifestyles and priorities, including his relationship with the mother of his child. There is an ingrained belief that men are incompetent when it comes to childcare tasks. How many of us women spend time redoing chores or childcare activities which we think our husband or boyfriend did not do well enough? This view of ineffectiveness is not only hurting our men, but it is not helping us as women. We are spending an extra hour or two redoing childcare tasks we believe our partner did not carry out to our liking. Another barrier to men's involvement in childcare is the fact that we do not take childcare work seriously. We do not place value on childcare work when women do it, and definitely do not place enough value on it when men do it. Clearly, childcare work matters in our lives as women, and it matters in men's lives. It matters for the children, and it matters for the issue of violence against women. Research has shown that when men participate in childcare work within the home, there was a decrease in violence against women and violence against children. It is important, therefore, that men equally participate in parenthood from the very conception of the child to the time this child becomes an adult. With that being said, we must note that since men are required to be there for the mother and the child even before birth, adequate time must be given to them as well so that they may be able to carry out the functions of fatherhood to the best of their ability. There is wide recognition of the need to increase the participation of men in domestic work and family responsibilities by encouraging the reconciliation of family and working life for both men and women, including through adoption of family support policies and programs. Men, as well as women, suffer negative consequences from work-life imbalances and have much to gain from better contact with children and participation in family life. The draft updated National Gender Policy is committed to enabling men to accept family responsibilities and play equal or complementary roles to women in the nurturing and parenting of children. Paternity leave promotes the active participation of males within the family, male responsibilities in family life, healthier notions of masculinity, and is a means of transforming gender stereotypes in the society. As the Minister responsible for Gender Affairs, I am working with the staff of the Bureau of Gender Affairs to finalize and ensure the approval of the National Gender Policy. We are also moving closer towards the adoption of the Child Justice Bills, which we expect will respond more appropriately to current societal trends. The rights of women, children, and families in Dominica will be better protected following the implementation of these bills. These bills aim to increase the capacity of the judicial and legal system by providing laws which make fundamental shifts in the protection of our women, children, and the family. The bill supports regulations which intend to strengthen institutional capacity in order to resolve matters related to the family and children in a more holistic way. Hence, the reform of family law addresses multiple matters, including marriage, divorce and separation, status of children, paternity, domestic violence, among others. In my capacity as minister, I will continue to advocate for policy measures that benefit our men, our boys, our fathers. We need men to achieve gender equality as advocates, as engaged fathers, men as caregivers, men who can denounce violence against women and girls. Evidently, we need programs that sensitize men to the beauty that is conception and birth. It sounds impossible, but it is worth highlighting and setting in motion. We need programs that bring men into contact with their adolescent sons and daughters. We need to keep in mind that our business and preoccupation is the child in the final analysis. How do we get men to understand that they do not need money to love their children? How do we get women to understand that a man's relationship is not defined solely by child support? Ladies and gentlemen, there's work to be done, and we must move quickly to interpret that moment when the child looks into his father's eyes. There is much to be discovered here. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister King. We've got to the end of our panel discussion, so I will pose one question to each of the panelists in the interest of time, so we can move to an end. I will start in the order of presentation. Ms. Blandford, what are some of the, as a non-government organization and an international organization at that, what are some of priorities of the business professional women moving forward?
Hello? Right. The business and professional women, one of our major plans is to offer, as I mentioned in my presentation, and we're looking to offer programs initially to members as it relates to financial planning, also with regards to budgeting and various other programs. We do also intend to expand that to the general public for other persons who may be interested. And well, that we believe will be important to women, because as we are a women's organization, and we have identified that most persons, they're not ready. They need the assistance, and we also look to embark on seeking assistance from our international organization, with regards to these programs.
Thank you, Ms. Blandford.
Thank you.
Chief Magistrate, you shared a lot about your own experiences in the courtroom, dealing with survivors who have experienced abuse. From your own experience, what do you think that abusers themselves also experience abuse growing up? What do you think about the term of the cycle of violence?
Well, normally, it is said that habits are caught, and generally, a lot of times people leave what they see or what they've learned. And I cannot specifically speak to sexual abuse or sexual assault, but I do know that in other spheres, for example, probably somebody who steals, if you go back to their history, you will see that their father stole. People who end up in court, sometimes you see fathers, you see sons, you see the same names, you see junior coming up. And yes, I have seen it in terms of sexual abuse as well. I remember dealing with a young lady who was sexually assaulted, and then her brother was a child molester and ended up in court, and her father was one as well. So it does run in cycles, yes, a lot of times.
Thank you, Magistrate. Honorable Ian Douglas, I think you gave a very comprehensive presentation on the historical context and the contributions of women. What advice would you give to a young woman considering a political career?
Yeah, well, the advice I would give to a young woman considering a political career in Dominica particularly is that you have to be very thin-skinned, you have to be very thick-skinned, you have to be brave, and you have to be bold, because a lot of our politics still entails a lot of mudslinging and a lot of mipwe and a lot of character assassination, unfortunately. So you have to be able to blank out all of that and be focused on your purpose and your mission, which really is supposed to be, and in a lot of cases is the development of your community, the development of people, the empowerment of the less fortunate among us, and really changing lives. So the advice I would give, and a lot of women are more susceptible to that situation than men, because again of our society. So you will find that women's antecedents are more looked into and brought to the fore. What you did before, how much this and how much that and how much money you was with and all of that, tend to come into people's analysis and their decision making as to whether they want to support you, rather than a man. Because our society, a man with 5 and 6 women outside is a macho man. A woman who probably had 6 and 7 relationships, albeit at different times in her life, is looked at derogatively. So it's just the perception of our society makes it more difficult for a woman to step into the political and the social sphere and make her contribution as equal to her male peers. But albeit, if you are strong, like I said, if you are focused, and if you know yourself and you're confident, then all of this is just obstacles that in the course of things you can overcome and be successful in the political arena.
Thank you, Honorable Douglas. And the final question to Honorable Dr. Addis King. I think throughout your presentation you spoke about both the importance of mothers and fathers contributing towards a child's upbringing. One of the African proverbs said that it takes a community, a village, to raise a child. Do you think that is still important today?
Oh, very important. Even in my own experience, I must say that I was basically raised by the community of St. Joseph, because I always had to give a detailed report of my report book and everything. And you see, that helped us to be on our feet, because if you knew that somebody would see you doing something wrong in the village and the message would get back to your parent and you'd get punished, you'd think twice about doing it. In the day of today, children are not admonished at home for doing things wrong in the public, and that doesn't give them the ability to think twice before they do something. I'll give you an example. We used to, as children, see people who might not be as well developed as others, and then it would go into somebody's mind to probably make fun of that person. But if there were other people around from the village, you would not even think of doing that, because you know you'd be punished later. But today, somebody might see that and say, oh, my mother will not listen to them anyway, they can go ahead and they can do whatever. And people that are vulnerable and honestly need love and support, you see children on the wayside making fun of them, and they will not be punished at home. And I think that actually what you do out there, the little things you do as children, if you are not taught that it is not right, if you are not punished for doing it, then you will keep doing it, and you grow up to be that bandit that think it's okay to do what you want. So I think it's very important that we have a community looking out for children. And like I say, a mother's love is important, a father's love important, and even further, your grandfathers, your uncle, you need to see you showing that kind of love and support for others, so that you grow up knowing that that is the right way that you need to do it. So it's very, very important that I think a community does, it actually takes a community to raise a child.
Okay, thank you, Honorable King. We have now reached to the end. I would like to thank our presenters, our panelists. We can all agree that they're very busy persons, so we have a small token of appreciation from our ministry for taking time off your busy schedule to come with us today for an entire 2 hours. I think the presentations were great, and I hope our listening audience enjoyed it just as much as we did in the parish hall. So thank you once again, and have a good day. Thank you.
And there you have it, the end of the International Women's Day round table discussion, of course bringing down the curtains on the observance of International Women's Day. Some interesting topics touched this morning at this round table, and quite a wealth of information coming from this discussion here this morning at the Goodwill Parish Hall. So again, presenters come from the UN Women Barbados, Mrs. Tony Brodba. She's a representative of the UN Women Barbados. You heard from the president of the Business Professional Women, Miss Diane Blandford. You heard from Chief Magistrate Scandia George, also from the Honorable Ian Douglas and the Honorable Dr. Addis King. That concludes the roundtable discussion here this morning. And like I mentioned yesterday, all in efforts of observance of International Women's Day, and we continue to applaud all our women here in Dominica. No matter what field that you are in at this time, continue to doing the work for your community, your family, your community, and of course the society by extension. On behalf of our techs on duty, Dean Thomas, our Chief Tech, and Aaron Wilshire, my name is Kimara Ito, taking you back to Studio One on this Thursday afternoon.